Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day two of the LogiSYM conference. It's great to be with you. After yesterday's live session, we are very excited this morning to start off day two with a presentation from COBA Supply Chain Solutions. And we encourage you to please enter your questions, your chats, because we'll be monitoring them. And we've got three guests from COBA Solutions, Supply Chain Solutions, with us today. And leading the panel will be Jamie Sterling, who's the head of the software sales at COBA Supply Chain Software. Jamie, welcome, and welcome to your colleagues. We look forward to your presentation and to the discussion that follows. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we certainly encourage our audience to ask questions, engage in the debate, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion. Jamie, in your hands. All the best.
Thanks. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Well, greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us in today's session. Today, we're going to talk about some of the current complexities that are faced by supply chains, in particular in the Asia-Pacific region. For those of you who aren't familiar with Kerber's supply chain in Asia-Pacific, Kerber's what we call a supply chain technology provider. We're not just a WMS provider. We provide WMS, transport management systems, last mile delivery systems, automation solutions, robotics, AMR solutions, and voice, vision, and mobility solutions as well. So we are a portfolio provider in that technology space and supply chain execution space. With me in today's sessions are two of our resident experts, I would say, in their respective fields. We have Approve Kasha. Approve is a long time. Approve, give us a wave. Spent a long time in his career deploying supply chain execution tools within the Asia Pacific region, both client side and vendor side. He's worked with some of the largest retailers and grocery providers here in Australia and New Zealand, and he's also worked with some of the largest WMS and TMS supply chain execution providers here also. Approve has seen his fair share of challenges in these complex times. I mean, he's seen the damaging impact that the COVID has had on supply chain in these unprecedented times, and I think some of his knowledge and wisdom and input here will be valuable to the broader group. In addition, joining me also in Melbourne is Balram Sharma. Balram, who leads our 3PL solution practice here, has been spearheading 3PL implementations from the UK right down through Asia, ANZ, Melbourne. He is based here in Melbourne as well. Unfortunately, we can't be with you in person to do this, but I think we're doing the next best thing, which is via virtual. As an expert in his area, in Balram's area, he's been the forefront of the challenges that 3PLs are facing, and he's going to be here to share some of his thoughts and insights and how we can overcome some of those challenges. So Balram, just give us a quick wave so we know who's who. Thanks. So I mean,
hello everyone.
Thanks, Balram. This last 18 months, I mean, everyone's probably tired of talking about COVID, but it really has exacerbated and perpetuated the impacts and complexities that we're currently facing in supply chain. A lot of digital roadmaps that were 20-25-year roadmaps have been condensed into 2022, 2023 sort of initiatives. I mean, I'm going to start off pretty straightforward, and hey, Approve being at the forefront of some of these retail implementations and the client side especially. What are these some of these omni-channel challenges that have come about because of the pandemic? What have you seen, and where have you seen technology either overcome that hurdle, mitigate that hurdle, or really complement it as well, right?
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for your introduction, and hello, everyone. Coming from an experience, just not only from the vendor perspective, but also from the consumer or the client side, what I experienced this pandemic actually created an opportunity for both omni-channel or single-channel partners. For the single-channel partners, it was an opportunity to upscale their game and come into the foreground on how the omni-channel can help us can help, and as well as for the omni-channel partners, it was an opportunity to see what was not there in their code to kind of help them overcome the challenges. As we all know, omni-channel is all about a vast experience. It's an experience where you see a seamless kind of view from the customer, from a customer, right from the purchase to the delivery. But and the integrating factor in this is the supply chain. So what we experienced in the pandemic was there was some disconnect right from the solution procurement or something which was ordered. There were delays because of the overall. I'll not blame it to the only supply chain, but also on the vendor side there were some delays on the procurement. And the other challenge, which probably I believe was the omni-channel, is always about customer experience. So they for a customer like me who is ordering something on the website, they would like, if something goes wrong, they would like to go and physically reorder or go to the store and kind of get a return for that order. With the pandemic and the government restrictions in place, most of the stores were either closed or they were working less hours. So this actually presented a nice a nice way to enhance the customer's return. So most of the retailers, they actually invested a lot of effort on how to upscale their game for their returns order. So that something could be done rather going to the physical store, if something could be done by through other channels. So that was probably, in my opinion, some of the challenges which was there in the omni-channel space, but how some of the retailers overcome this.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying. I'm seeing some massive e-commerce retailers, in particular, or e-tailers, we like to label them, are actually encouraging you buy more to return as well, right? So it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, from a 3PL perspective, Balram, like returns. I mean, I walk in 3PL sites probably every couple of weeks, or sorry, twice a week, and there's always that return section. It's the dreaded returns. What else are you seeing from the challenges and the pressures that the 3PLs are facing from on that omni-channel side of things from the pandemic since kicked off?
Yep, Jamie. So for the 3PL, it's already complicated enough because we have vast majority of customers that we have to satisfy rather than just one. So I believe 3PL Playground, they were not really ready with all sort of the integration upstream all the way to the e-commerce channels where the orders are going to flow through to their system through the customer's ERP. So that kind of bit and technology and not able to quickly turn that around with the increasing expectations from the customers, because people, those who were already having those technologies, were able to deliver those services, and that was increasing the demand and the requirements from the customer side. But the 3PLs or the small Instagram people, the purchases, this little suppliers whose businesses overnight have boomed because of a lot of traffic online and people sitting at houses, that actually increased a lot of foot traffic into the 3PLs, and not having proper integrated solutions and having to manually still entering and using the papers was actually very tiresome and laborious task to satisfy all the requirements. So I think integration was one of the challenges, not everything not being integration, and not able to quickly adapt to the environment. And because there were lots of different softwares working in the 3PLs with the transport, warehouse management systems and other stuff, but there wasn't a direct integration between all these channels, which was able to source the end-to-end visibility to the consumer on the websites, which is often the data that is required to show that visibility to the consumer.
Yeah.
I think these are some of the major challenges that were putting people off during the pandemic for 3PL.
Yeah, I think, look, in any program, integration is probably one of the biggest challenges, and having that real-time visibility, not only from your organization but from the consumer as well. An interesting comment you made there is about laborious tasks, and I'm going to sort of segue a little bit here with one of the common global challenges, not even just in Asia Pacific, but globally, is labor. Right? It's hard to come by good labor. It's hard to retain labor. Labor, there is a global labor shortage currently. I mean, from your perspective, Balram, first of all, how do we entice sort of the up and coming generations that hey, nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to go pick boxes, right? But how do we entice that up and coming generation to focus their attention in supply chain and sort of drive more labor talent into that 3PL space? What do you see from a digital perspective? How can we entice that and incentivize that?
Well, I think labor is one of the very big pain points, especially in ANZ region, because we've been closed and not having a lot of labor coming into, and with all the restrictions in place, not able to go out. But I think some of the challenges have which I have seen in the 3PL, the people have accommodated using the digitization as robotics. They introduce follow-up robots to reduce the stress on the laborers, so they don't get tired enough and able to increase their throughput. And at the same time, they also introduced an ability to have a mix of both. So there are different warehouse tasks like picking, put away replenishments. So optimizing them, making sure that wherever those tasks can be automated or can be merged with the human to make them faster, and making sure we have more throughput with the same amount of labor, because there is no more labor coming into the picture, right? And also make having these introducing these new sections of robotics are introducing the new jobs in supply chains which were never there before. So the new people and the new generations that are coming forward are trying to see these things and automating and getting it very excited with everything coming into place, and also the new labor, the new people coming in, they're not picking on the paper anymore, they're working with the robotics. So it's an exciting job altogether, like coming every day and working with the robots and talking to the machines. In a way, it also gives them a kick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's a different dynamic, right? Sorry, Apurva, I
Yes.
think I cut you off there.
Now, I'm just adding to Balram's point. Gone are the days where a warehouse or a supply chain was a labor-intensive area. Now, if you look at the e-coms, where there are fast-moving robots, where you order stuff and you expect the delivery next day, it cannot be fulfilled by a manual-intensive warehouse. There has to be a robot. There has to be some sort of I would say some sort of software or play of robots and software to come in play, and that's where the whole supply chain area presents means like the career opportunities with these kind of smart things in play is a big area. I believe it presents a wonderful opportunity for people who are looking to enter this domain is vast, very vast.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do some research on it myself, and as you're aware, we have our dedicated team that focus on this. And I mean, we have our various types of robots, our good-to-person robots, where the goods are being brought to the pickers, so reducing any travel time. We also have what we call the cobot, or the collaboration robot, that follow the picker and reducing the need for the picker to continuously return the trolley to the packing station. This is all done by, so a lot of cool technologies there. I mean, in terms of really improving your outbound flow, I think robots are certainly a major component of that. But then from a systems perspective, what other technologies and digital technologies do you see that can complement that robotics sort of initiative? Is there peripherals there that you believe go hand in hand from your perspective?
Especially when like in initial days when you were like talking about there were paper-based warehouses where people used to pick or do the putaways based on the paper-based system. And then there was a shift where where there was an introduction of RF-based devices. RF actually little bit gamified the system, where the people found it very convenient to do or receive instructions and follow the instructions on their RF devices. Then came the voice. That was like a game changer. Voice, where you don't actually physically need a handheld device to carry around, and you can talk and you can just receive instruction on the go from a warehouse management system. On the floor, you receive the instruction, you pick the stuff, and you just do the stuff. So voice definitely augmented this whole space. This was like a stepping stone in the whole process, where I believe, in my personal experience with my previous organization, I believe voice was a game changer for them. Voice was definitely a game changer, where they experienced a, a heavy invest. I mean, like a little investment brought a good amount of transformation. So I believe voice to a part played a great role in augmenting this sector. And robotics, if you consider, is an upward journey from voice.
So what you're saying is voice is hands-free, and then you got robotics, which means your legs free. So
Yeah,
hands-free and legs-free, right?
hands free and legs
That's
free. Yes.
and I think, look, we talk about the outbound a lot, but I mean, to get the outbound perfect, you also have the upstream impact as well, which is the receiving, the inventory management, the cycle counting, the utilization of the correct storage areas, and ensuring that those storage areas are properly utilized. What digitalization do you think, or do you believe, Balram, that can be brought in to organizations to, hey, we've talked about the outbound, but really look at it upstream as well. How do we improve in those areas?
So that's very important. So I often say that if we get the inbound right, then the product will be flowing perfectly fine during its lifespan in the shed. So some of the challenges with 3PL side of things is that we often get the goods from overseas, from the suppliers, different suppliers. The things that people have put in digitization is already having a pre-labeled receipts and having the ASNs in place, so that when it reaches your warehouse, you're able to, first thing, you don't have to relabel everything because it's already labeled according to the interfaces, and also using the global GS1 standards, making sure the right information is getting captured, and less touch points. And you could receive more, especially in this pandemic, with a lot of stuff coming in, and with essential goods, the 3PL serving the essential industry. We found that if we have the pre-labeling and making sure we have an ability to receive more or multiple SKUs during the receiving, then we can actually do the more receiving through with the same amount of the label, and actually meet the needs of ever increasing demand of operations getting busier at the receiving time.
Yeah, I think that sort of creates another segue, and I have a question there, and I'm not going to ignore it. I think it's a very important one, Dr. Raymond Krishnan. I will get to it, but we talk about this labor, and I mean, we talk about the generations, and there's I think a you mentioned it, gamification, right? Tell us a little bit about conceptually what that means to businesses and how that can really create another enticing element of employment at that organization.
It's an interesting topic. Probably I'll say that gamification is just not like how we have explored. Even if we look at our personal space, how we have been attached to our mobile phones and the apps and those things, how it has kind of revolutionize our own space. The same thing goes in the warehouse. Like if I talk about the gamification, it actually entices, or it actually encourages the labor force to work not only optimized much in the optimized way, but also enhances their productivity by upscaling their game inside the warehouse. Like, just look at it like a challenge. It's a challenge probably thrown to them. Oh, if you can receive or complete this in this much time, you are number one of the ladder. So these kind of gamification softwares, or I would say gamification space inside the WMS space, actually not only increases the overall productivity, but also supports a labor force to upskill themselves as well as perform them better. So I think gamification is something to watch out in the coming years. It will kind of reverse. It will bring a lot of personal touch as well as a productivity to the warehouses.
So you're bringing an element of healthy competition,
Absolutely.
incentivized healthy competition.
It's all about it. Yeah, it's not only encouraging the overall productivity, but if you look at from the personal space, it also adds to kind of an excitement level. When you are doing your job, you have a software which can help you to perform better, not also through its UI or through the voice controls you receive, but also it has a lot of just like, imagine if you're on a when you are doing your workouts, it's how boring it is without having a phone or something. So
It's all about ease.
nobody likes to run 5Ks looking at just the mirror. So
That's why I wear a Garmin, right?
so yeah.
I'm gonna pivot a second. I want to address this question because I think it's a good question. And just for everyone who doesn't have the chat open, it's everyone talks about labor shortages in supply chains. Where is all the quote unquote labor being diverted to or going? In my humble opinion, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think what we have seen is volume has increased, and the onboarding and new labor cannot. There's not enough new labor coming in to meet that volume increase. Dr. Krishnan, I think partially that's one reason for it. I think, and this is a very sensitive topic, maybe not so much applicable to the APAC region, but I know in North America and our experience there, especially in 3PLs, is some organizations are actually reluctant to bring in the COVID mandate, the vaccination mandate, because of the locale that they live in, right? Because they fear, hey, if we bring in the COVID mandates, that could effectively wipe out 50% of my workforce who are of the opinion that they choose not to get it, right? So I don't think the labor is going anywhere. I think another element of that is there's a salary war or a remuneration war going on at the minute. The warehouse across the way may be paying $1 extra or $1.50 extra or have better benefits or better incentivization. And we're seeing a lot of attrition, short-term attrition, 3 months, 6 months stints. I mean, as of yesterday, I was at a visit, and that was one of the big challenges they had. So it's not going anywhere per se. It's not the pool is reducing, but I think the volume and the consumerism is increasing, and that pool of labor is not increasing at the same cadence, right? That is in my view. Approve. Do you see any?
In my understanding, I agree with you, Jamie. It's not going anywhere with the kind of volume we have seen the splurge in. It's like some of the retailers, as I mentioned earlier, that some of the retailers, they experience a growth of within 2 months, they experience a growth of last 5 years. So means like in order to fulfill those commitments, definitely there were challenges to get in the correct workforce and the more workforce, I'll say. So labor is definitely getting diverted to, I'll say, to more areas. There are more opportunities for people to work, and with better condition, as well as with better technology.
Correct. Thanks for sharing that. I think Balram, just I mean, we're going to pivot a little bit back into that inbound. We're talking about that upstream operation, right? We talked about ASNs. Let's talk about some of the COVID impacted challenges or COVID challenges that impacted that, and how organizations had to leverage more digitalization to ensure that the goods were coming in, but yet going out, right? I mean, I think we were on a call yesterday. We're talking about contact tracing within the warehouse, right? A vast warehouse and contact tracing. So some of those challenges that impact the volume throughput. What was used to sort of overcome that?
The picking, of course, have gone up heavily. One of the things is like 3PLs not able to manage their fast-moving consumer goods properly. So basically, the stock is scattered across everywhere in the warehouse. So properly optimizing the FMCG and making sure they are closest or they're segregated from the other bulk areas, making sure we have the less footprint to achieve more picking throughput and manage the order needs for the day. And also with the pandemic and e-commerce ability to having an order shipped to you within a day, if you make an order before 10 a.m., it also increased demand, and the operations and 3PLs not being ready to provide that kind of a service actually makes it even further harder. Some of the things that I have seen people putting in operations are optimizing their footprint to make sure they're doing more with the less footprints and ticking more locations, and also making sure they're doing the wave picks, two-step waves, and making sure they pick everything in a bulk and then spreading it across to the multiple e-commerce orders, so they don't have to visit the same location 10 times when they have to just go there once, and then within a small footprint they can further repack them into the small sachets of e-commerce orders. And also part of the robotics, wherever we can implement some of the tasks, because there is so much you can increase the throughput of a labor with the existing technology, operations, and using the integrations, right? To meet the ever increasing demands and not able to have enough people on the floor or not quickly able to train them to adapt to the processes, we need to come with a mix of both, where some of the task has to be automated, or the pickers working with the robots, as you said, goods to person, like in the picking aisles where pickers are picking, they don't have to go back and drop the trolleys and back at the dispatch area. There are robots that can do that for them. So those certain tasks, to making sure that we have the most amount of the picking going on with the less amount of pickers going off the aisles and not able to pick that. Plus, at the same time, reducing the stress on them, introducing the robotics.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, we're coming up on time very shortly, but I think a lot of what you said as well, organizations need to be agile and have an adaptable solution that they can change pretty rapidly. I mean, I think another challenge that I came across, certainly within my space, was organizations who had deployed these softwares and solutions were at the mercy of the vendor, right? There's a labor shortage in supply chain. There's also a labor shortage in technology, right? So there's a cascading effect there with development staff, technical staff who need to do these developments to meet the demands of the supply chains who are trying to meet the demands of the consumer, right? So having that, I think another lesson learned for organizations, supply chain, is have that internal talent that says, hey, we have a highly technical WMS solution. We should be able to make these changes and be agile and nimble as well, right? So I think they're important as well. That we have 3 minutes coming up. I think this has been great content. I love that you shared your views. It's been exciting. Any questions? I'm going to open up to the audience. If there's any questions, we're here to address. I mean, hey, this is what we do day in, day out. So we'll Q&A is quiet so far. Dr. Krishnan, did that answer your question? While software solution robotics gets smarter, what are some of the constraints like infrastructure that limit the optimization of your solutions? Great question. I mean, a good example is cold storage environments, right? We have a customer of mine, a very good friend of mine in Singapore, actually is trying to deploy AMR into -18 environments, right? Robotics are full of sensors, infrared sensors, motion sensors, proximity sensors. If you have a robot that's going hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold, condensation becomes an issue. So condensation, things we don't think about, these are challenges. Now, I know some providers are in the process of working on that and deploying that to overcome that. Another thing is as well, Joe, is the fact that, excuse me, is the weight, the floor weight bearing, especially in the likes of Hong Kong and Singapore, which are, you have in multi-tier warehouses. Does that floor have the weight bearing capacity to have such a small, I would say, concentration of weight, right? These are things you got to consider. You also have physical infrastructures, right? Like networks. Do you have the right network availability? These are all things. These have to have dedicated networks. So this is a conversation I could have for hours and hours and hours on that.
Adding to that point, probably Jamie, this pandemic actually saw a surge of, because people working from home, it definitely had a surge on the infrastructure. I'll say not only on a private infrastructure, but on the public infrastructure. And depending, like the warehouses definitely don't have the they definitely depend on the public infrastructure to provide the network connectivity. So that is one of the key areas which you touched upon, that how those infrastructure can be leveraged or can be enhanced. That was one of the challenges. That I feel that's one of the challenges as well.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Answer. My apologies for the spelling and the grammatics. My typing is not as good as that. But isn't that one of the constraints and one of the messages, the takeaway messages from this panel, that users need to consider not only the software robotic solution, but the whole infrastructure around that to justify the investment, the return on their productivity, and so on and so forth. And sometimes people forget that's an important element of that. How do you address that when you're discussing the projects?
Well, I think the beauty about robotics, in my view, is it actually requires minimal infrastructure, right? It's not a fixed asset automation that has to have a lot of real estate space that's attached to the building. The beauty about robotics is infrastructure is actually minimal impact robotics is minimal impact to infrastructure. Yes, you have your technical infrastructure. Yes, you have to have some form of physical infrastructure there. But real estate space is condensed because you're reducing your space. The ability that it's mobile as well. So, hey, I've outsized or I've outgrown my current distribution center. I need to move distribution centers to a larger distribution center. Well, I can just throw my robots in the back of a container and go to my new distribution center and just relay the floor, right? So in terms of the robotics, the infrastructure impact, in my view, people can certainly argue with me on this one. In my view, it's actually minimal impact from my perspective.
Okay. That's great. Good. Thanks for the answer. We're running out of time. In fact, we're slightly over now. Any other comments or questions or opinions from the public? It would be really great to have our three experts answer these points of interest. So, Jamie, maybe you can just summarize some of the takeaways for us, for our audience. What are the things that maybe you want to leave as a message, parting message, before we close in a minute or so?
Certainly, I think, look, fundamentally, digital is the path forward. I mean, we long gone the days of throwing people at the problem or throwing people at the challenge. So the ability to have that digital infrastructure there, that digital backbone, to ensure that your efficiencies are gained through your operation, your upstream integrations, your downstream integrations, your demand forecasting are all optimal, right? Running a suboptimal supply chain is the largest cost of business at the minute, right? So looking to the future, investing in these solutions. We talk about return on investment. Some of these ROIs can be as little as 6 months, right? Depending on size and scale, obviously. So certainly, I think digital is really going to be driving supply chain, and supply chain will be, I guess, the new technology industry, right? It's being talked about by leaders, global leaders. Historically, it was never spoken about, but it's getting a lot of airtime at the minute. So digital and technology and supply chain will be merging together, and you'll see this. You'll see digital really driving the results.
Great, Jamie. Thanks very much for that summary. Apoorv, Balram, great to talk to you guys. Thank you very much. All the best, and very much appreciate your inputs. All the very best. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Cheers.
Bye.